The battle for humanity's survival rages on as Yuno and Lucius continue their clash throughout the sky of the Clover Kingdom, all while Mimosa continues her struggle of trying to heal Asta. This is a battle of attrition. Will Yuno's anti-magic last long enough for its brother to return to the fight, or will the forces sent to stop her keep Mimosa from saving humanity's final hope? Okay, so this was yet another battle chapter, but this time it was even more exciting than chapter 381's, because the clash between the Spade Prince and the fake Wizard King have hit all new heights as the two continue to outdo each other by sending bigger and more creative moves at one another. My favorite move in the chapter is probably Yuno's quintile attrition flagellum, which is how I think you pronounce that word, where he connects a beam of anti-magic through his stars to the demon dweller, forming a whip and swinging it at Lucius, destroying the giant armor magic he stole from the 20th Wizard King, Edward Avalache, which again, I think that's how you pronounce that name, and is again another example of Tabata canonizing the movie in this final saga, as we saw Lucius using moves from both Funny Bunny and Jester in the previous chapter. Honestly, after seeing him use the magic of the Wizard King from the movie, I kinda wish that had been his aesthetic for the entire time. Like, instead of mostly using the magic of his siblings and Lucifero, or even his time magic, he focused more in on using the magic of all the past Wizard Kings. Because there's what, 22 Wizard Kings that we still know absolutely nothing about? This could have been a great way to give us at least a little bit of info on them. Then again, he has been using magic that we don't know who he got them from, so maybe he has been doing that this entire time and we just didn't notice, because again, we know nothing about the past Wizard Kings. But one magic he did use in this chapter that I noticed right away was the giant sword of light the first Wizard King used in this battle against the demonized Licht. And seeing that sword in this chapter immediately reminded me of the anime, because for a good while there, the opening to damn near every episode was that scene of Lumiere shooting that sword straight through Licht, starting from episode 3 and going all the way to the end of the L Saga with only a handful of episodes skipping it. Might even go beyond that, honestly, that's just where I stopped counting. But I feel like this was the reaction Tabata wanted from us for the scene in this chapter to make us think back to the anime as a way to help remind us of the fact that, hey, it's finally coming back. Because if you watch the anime, even after 4 years of being over, this specific scene is still burned in the back of your mind. So just one look at Lucius gearing up to throw the sword at Yuno should automatically trigger it to start playing in your brain. And if it didn't, then you haven't watched enough of the anime, and I highly recommend that you get caught up before it returns next year, or whenever it's coming back. But getting back to the action, Yuno manages to not only block the sword, but also use it to counterattack Lucius, using his stars to create an anti-magic shield that completely stops the attack, called Quintile Attrition Scutum, which basically translates to 5-star shield, then compressing that shield and using it to shoot a beam of anti-magic back at Lucius called Quintile Astrum Hasta, which translates to 5-star spear. And what it seems like happened is that Yuno took the power of that sword, absorbed it, converted it into pure magic power, and then shot it right back at its source, which is a very impressive and useful ability to have because it essentially cuts off Lucius from being able to send big spells like that at Yuno out of fear that he'll just continue to use them to fuel his own attacks. And what I really like about him using this new ability is that it's implied he got the idea from Asta, since he is currently using the Demon Dweller and he knows it has the power to absorb magic from your allies and convert them into magical attacks infused with anti-magic. This is just him doing that exact same thing, but with his opponent's magical power, which honestly makes it much more effective. Like, one of the biggest weaknesses of the Demon Dweller, in my opinion, has always been that it requires Asta to have people he has a bond with in order to make the most use of it, which isn't really that big of a hurdle for him to get over in this series, considering in most big fights where Asta doesn't completely dominate his opponents, he usually has someone he's pretty close to right beside him. So he almost always has a supply of magic around him to use, despite him these days mostly using the katana he got from Yami over his other swords. But imagine if he could unlock this ability with the Demon Dweller to absorb his opponent's own magic and use it against them. He'd be pretty busted, just like Scutum and Hasta make Yuno. At least while he has the anti-magic, I'm not so sure he could use them without it, because I feel as though it's the anti-magic that lets him absorb the spell, not his star magic. Though, to be fair, with the combination of his two magic types, Yuno has come up with some pretty impressive spells that I normally wouldn't have thought were possible, so I wouldn't completely count out the idea of this still working in some capacity, even without the anti-magic. But that is a struggle Yuno's faced with, And now that he's more accustomed to using the anti-magic, he is faring much better against Lucius than he was at the start of this third round of their battle. But even with the boost it gives him, the two are still essentially evenly matched in this fight. Neither side is getting the upper hand as they go blow for blow, which ultimately is exactly what Lucius is planning for. Because the longer this fight goes on, the more anti-magic Yuno will have to expend in order to keep up with Lucius, which means he gets closer and closer to running out with each new spell he uses. Now again, Asta has seemingly gifted his brother with much more anti-magic than he did his squad mates on the Black Bulls, but we can already see the anti-magic side of Yuno fading away. And it's not like Yuno could try to preserve the anti-magic by holding back on using it and focusing more on using his own natural abilities, because the second he does, Lucius will bombard him in quick succession with such powerful attacks that he'll be forced to rely on it more and more. Yuno is very quickly being backed into a corner, and his only hope of surviving this might be to simply just turn this into a game of cat and mouse and go on the run with Lucius chasing him. Actually, wait, no, scratch that. Because the second Yuno tries that, Lucius will just turn his attention back on the civilians, forcing Yuno's hands anyway. So yeah, I was feeling good about Yuno's chances in this, especially with how quickly he got the hang of using the Demon Dweller despite his struggle with it in chapter 381. But now it's become even clearer that he needs Asta here, back in the fight before the anti-magic runs out and Lucius turns him into one of his paladins. Which, speaking of Asta, let's check in with him and Mimosa. As we see the two are still on the run, Mimosa trying her best to heal him while dodging blasts from the pursuing angel. And just as it seems they're backed into a corner, they get saved by the combined efforts of three very unlikely characters. And hey look, just like I promised you for the past two videos, it's Leo in an actual chapter, not just a cover page, teaming up with Kirsch and Langris. Not exactly a team I ever thought we'd see working together, but hey, it is pretty thematic. Considering both Kirsch and Langris fought against Asta and Mimosa during the Royal Knight selection exam, both going in looking down on our main character for being both a peasant and magicless, only to walk away from that fight with more respect for him due to his hard work. The only one that's kind of the oddball here is Leo, because he doesn't really fit into that category of people who look down on Asta and then began to have a better opinion of him after they fought. Leo from the start had a pretty good relationship with Asta despite him being magicless. I mean, he was pretty much begging Asta to be his rival within 5 seconds of meeting him. But the important thing is that all three of them are here willing to risk their lives for him, because they have all grown to respect Asta so much that they improved as people just from getting to know him. In Asta, Leo found a rival that helped push him to reach for the same heights his older siblings did, despite originally feeling like he could never live up to their example. Kirsch learned to see the potential in others and stop looking down on those that didn't match his idealized version of beauty, becoming a lot less self-centered. And Langris was able to get over his insecurities surrounding his brother and form a much healthier relationship with Finral. That was not the outcome any of these characters were supposed to have. Each of them were fated to either continue on as they were, never growing past their faults, or just straight up end up dying by this point. Same with the Elves, the Diamond Squad, the Silver Siblings, Yami and Nijika, Noct, and so on and so on. None of them were supposed to become the characters that they are today, but through their interactions with Asta, their fates had drastically changed, improving all their lives for the better, to the point where even those who were once fighting against them to the death are now here risking their lives to help save his. And Yuno calls it out in this chapter. Lucius did not see any of this coming, that former enemies would so willingly become some of the Clover Kingdom's strongest allies. That is the real power that Asta has. The ability to change fate in ways that even someone with the power to peek into thousands of timelines couldn't predict. And with Charmy and Finral coming in at just the right time to help give Mimosa the boost in mana she needed in order to completely heal Asta, he makes his grand return to the battle, cutting down the angel right in front of him, screaming at Lucius that he's ready to finally take him down.